Good good morning everyone and welcome to the third TSEC conference where innovation meets sustainability in the most exciting ways. I am your host, John, and let me tell you, I am absolutely thrilled to be guiding you through the third TSEC conference Back to the Future 2024. Oh yes, we're diving headfirst into the time streams today because what better way to shape tomorrow than by learning from yesterday? It's like hopping in a DeLorean and zipping through the ages to uncover the secrets of sustainability and innovation. Now, buckle up because we've got a very exciting lineup here. We've assembled a dream team of visionaries, experts, and all around awesome individuals who are here to drop some knowledge bombs on us. And trust me, you do not want to miss a single moment. Before we dive into this time traveling extravaganza, let me give a massive shout out to the brains behind this operation, the third cohort students of the Erasmus Mundus Master's Program, TISE, or Transition Innovation and Sustainability Environments. They've poured their hearts and soul into making this experience unforgettable. This conference was organized by our cohort, a newly designed European excellence program with a focus on sustainable and resilient societal, business, and industry processes and structures. We are supported by the TISA Consortium, consisting of four universities across Europe: the University of Continuing Education Krems, Nova University of Lisbon, Poznan University of Economics and Business, and the University College Dublin. We really hope you enjoy it as much as we did organizing it. So if you are here in the YouTube chat, let's give them a bunch of emojis, hearts, party reacts, and smileys. All right, because today is just the beginning. Our speakers are here to ignite your imagination, challenge your perceptions, and maybe even inspire a little bit of action. And hey, speaking of action, don't forget about tomorrow's Designathon at the University College Dublin Belfield campus. And trust me, you do not want to miss out on this chance to design an AI based solution that could change the game. That is actually intriguing. So, I hope everyone is now ready because we're jumping into our sessions. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road. For our first session, titled Resilience and Scaling in the Emerging Artificial Intelligence Landscape, we will focus on embracing change and building resilience to navigate uncertainties in the emerging technological landscape effectively, recognizing the inevitability of change and the need for adaptability. All of these, we believe, are important for changemakers like us. So allow me to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Loli Mansi. Dr. Lolly Mansi is a distinguished anthropologist and AI ethicist hailing from Dublin, Ireland. Dr. Mansi serves as the program director for innovation and entrepreneurship at the University College Dublin Innovation Academy. And with a multifaceted background spanning anthropology and AI ethics, Dr. Mansi is not only a renowned keynote speaker, but also an award winning storyteller and entrepreneur. Her expertise lies in progressive education, innovation, entrepreneurship, and organizational learning, making her a pivotal figure in shaping these fields. So I guess we still need to have a bit of few time before Dr. Loli comes in. So I just want to see first our YouTube comments and let's see what the audiences are saying. I guess a lot of people are already here in the YouTube live. They're saying good morning, everyone. Okay, we also want to ask people where they are coming from across the world. So please tell me where are you staying and where are you watching this conference from. Okay, Roberto Ramos says she's super excited for today's session, and Marin is saying that this is gonna be a very informative one. Yes, I'm really sure that everyone has prepared a very exciting presentation for everyone. And I hope that we get a lot of knowledge and learning from all of our dear speakers. Oh, Marin said she's from the Netherlands, and we also have Fatma, who's based in Oman. We have Safa, who is now in Turkey. Safa is one of our cohort members. We have AJ, who's coming from the Philippines, and of course, people from Ireland, David, Ope, and Anna, who's watching from a very surprisingly sunny Dublin. We also have um, participants from Morocco and from Accra, Ghana. That's amazing. What what is exciting from our conference today is that we have participants from all over the world, especially being invited by all of our amazing members of the TSEC cohort as well. So I guess now that we can move on to our first session, apologies because our first session will now going to be focusing on the growth strategies for sustainability. And in this session, we will be discussing some concepts on degrowth and the critical strategy for developed economies to prioritize education, environmental concerns, and broader sustainability and issues. So, by this definition of our first session, can you tell me what specific interesting topic or what specific information that you're looking for that could help our speakers guide their presentation? We have here Stefano Zaniboni. He says, "Hello, Stefano from Italy and TSET third cohort. So hyped for your second session of the day on AI skills." Wow, that is exactly interesting as well. I hope you're as much as excited as us. We also have some participants coming from France. And Roberta says she's excited to know how corporations are seeing degrowth strategies. That's really interesting to understand. How do private industries and even the public sector are looking at degrowth strategies as one of their mechanisms? Aisha is also excited about degrowth as a topic. I guess that's one important topic that we should really talk about today because many of our participants are expecting it. We also have Anna, who says, which role do policies play in tackling the constant growth paradigm? Wow, that's a big word. What is a constant growth paradigm? Maybe someone can explain it to us. Ayman says, hey, third cohort, good luck from Pakistan. Come on, Tisa peeps. Let's go. Stefano also said from here, what are the biggest challenges for degrowth and what are the key areas of intervention? I guess that's a really interesting question to ask. What specific actions can we make from different types of stakeholders, from the academe, from the businesses, from the private sector to the public sector? How do we see degrowth? How do we approach it from different perspectives? And how do we come together and work together, collaborate to kind of contribute in making this vision of a degrowth world or degrowing our development trajectory possible. We also have participants coming from Bangladesh. Masuda Khan, how are you? I hope it's a nice day there in Bangladesh and you have a good weather. We also have participants from sunny Bray, not far away from Dublin, Nirisha. And Diego said he is waiting all year just for this conference. Yes, this TISA conference only happens once a year, and it's interesting that each TISA cohort, who are members of the Erasmus Mundus program, have dedicated their time and their efforts to coordinate all of what they've learned and come up with an amazing lineup of speakers so that we can hear what sustainability is and what are the most latest trends about the technologies that we want to be updated on. So yeah, don't forget to send out your thoughts and your feedback on our YouTube chat. Right now we have 40 participants and I hope it continues to grow before our first speaker jumps in. Our first speaker, who is Dr. Patrick Brody, will be joining us at 9:45 p.m. So we still actually have 5 minutes. Ope Abenego Brady says, excited to learn how resource efficiency can contribute to degrowth. Exactly. How do we manage our resources? How do we use it effectively, right? And is resource efficiency really connected with degrowth as a strategy? Oh, Roberta has a question here in our YouTube chat. Can you tell us how the conference was organized by the group? How was it possible to include such a diverse group? Of course. So the conference was organized by the TSEC cohort, the third TSEC cohort, 2023 to 2025. And every one of us are coming from different countries and different backgrounds as well. So the focus of the TISA program is on interdisciplinarity. And with that, we contribute all of our um, knowledge and all of our experience as we brainstorm and as we design the two workshops that we're going to be and two parts of this TSEC conference that we're conducting. So for the first half of the TSEC conference, which is the online part, we invited people from all of the interesting topics that we brainstorm. So we have emerging AI, we also have sustainability, and we also have resilience to talk about what they're what they know about it and to talk about their works. How was it possible to include such a diverse group? I guess because we are also studying in four different universities in Europe. We started in Lisbon, in Nova University of Lisbon, and then we moved here now in Dublin, in University College Dublin, and we will be moving in Poland, in Poznan University of Economics and Business, and in UCD, which is University College Dublin, and CREMS and University of Continuing Education CREMS. All of these connections that we have as well allows us to organize such big event. One of our previous professors are also here in the YouTube chat. Greetings to Jana. Hi everyone, so good to be here. Congrats to you all for organizing this conference. Jana is one of our professors for our digital methods class back in Nova University of Lisbon, where we learn a lot about understanding social media and the internet and behaviors of people within that space. And I guess that's a really good way to see working in a microcosm, right? It gives us insight on how people actually move in this world, and it has a lot of implication in building a sustainable and resilient societal business and industry processes and structures. So yeah, I guess we can now start with our first speaker. May I introduce you our first session for today, degrowth strategies for sustainability. So in this session, we will be discussing the concept of degrowth as a critical strategy for developed economies to prioritize education, environmental concerns, and broader sustainability issues. In this session, we will explore the convergence of data infrastructures and fish farming in industrial literature, illustrating the integration of digital infrastructure, energy systems, and ecological considerations within capitalist frameworks aimed at sustainable planetary management. To lead our discussion, we have Dr. Patrick Brody.
Hello. Hey, sorry.
Patrick?
Just hopped in here, so I apologize. Still figuring out the interface a little bit and trying to look at the instructions. So let me
No
just
worries.
present, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Here, I will do the introductions and things like this once I um, figure out the
No, allow
key.
me to introduce you first. So, Dr. Patrick Brody is a lecturer and an assistant professor and an Ad Astra Fellow in the School of Information and Communication Studies. His research, teaching, and supervision interests include media infrastructure, critical data studies, environmental media, energy and resource politics, extractivism, supply chains, and media industry studies. So, how are you doing right now?
Yeah, I'm doing well. So I'm gonna have to hop out for 1 second because my computer's making me update that. I'll be back in let's say 30 seconds, and I
Okay,
will
sure.
start the presentation there. All right, see you in a sec. Yeah.
No problem.
All right. Sorry about that.
So, yeah. Okay, a lot of our participants are giving Patrick a round of applause. We also have participants coming from Kyrgyzstan. That's cool. Hello. So please tell us if you have any more questions or if you're preparing yourself to listen to Dr. Patrick Brody and you think of an interesting question, please do send it to the YouTube chat so that our organizers can take note of it and we can line it up as one of the questions during the Q&A session after Dr. Patrick Brody give his presentation. We are excited with the questions that you are going to propose. So help us have a very interesting and very productive discussion as well. If you want to learn more about Dr. Patrick's research, especially around the environmental impacts of the digital infrastructure, you can see the link here in the YouTube comments below, and you can look at his works as well. So,
Hi,
Patrick, are
sorry about
you
that. Okay, so share
got it
screen.
now?
Select time to share.
No worries. You can take your time.
Cool. All right. Can you see that?
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, the floor is yours.
Okay. Are you seeing it properly, or is it what's it called? Is it
You need
presenter
to
view?
have it full screen.
Okay?
Yes, that would be better.
Looks good. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So thanks for having me. I'll be talking about some kind of newer research I've been working on here, which is on specifically the ecologies, the political ecologies of data as they're kind of emerging in and through different environmental datafication procedures. And the area that I'm interested on here is specifically fish farming, right? So environmental datafication has emerged as this kind of way of making efficient particular green emerging green industries, right? Whether that's carbon crediting and carbon monitoring, or things like the more sustainable production of fish protein, right? But related to my longer work, as you were just introducing there, this is related to a what I see as a kind of emerging data-driven rationality. To quote the critical data scholar Paolo Ricarte from 2019, I'm interested in these ways that, quote, data-driven rationality is supported by infrastructures of knowledge production developed by states, corporations, and research centers situated mainly in Western countries, and an economic system that supports capital accumulation and economic growth. This economic model, which is based on epistemic dominance, is reflected in research agendas and funding. And furthermore, entire infrastructure of the internet supports transactions, flows, and interactions that convert any form of existence in a possible source of data, right? So The ways in which, again, my interest in fish farming, which I'll describe to you a little bit here in a moment. What I'm interested is in the ways in which the rationalities of a particular kind of tech-driven capitalism, which map onto these much longer processes of, kind of extraction and quantification and extraction via quantification of certain kinds of life and certain kinds of activities. I'm interested in the ways in which that is then being mapped onto the particular industry of fish farming, right? And this is situated in what is increasingly being called the political ecology of data. So, for example, the geographers Eric Knost and Jenny Goldstein discussed this in their 2022 paper, saying that basically we can't understand the current conjuncture in global environmental politics without also understanding platforms, hardware devices, and algorithms and institutions that are enabling the increasing generation and use of digital data for, particular scientific processes that enable, green transitions. So, I'm contributing to a wider turn here, let's say. Specifically, Jennifer Gabrys would be somebody who would be really, really influential in this area, who's talked for a really long time about environmental sensing and, the kind of ways in which environments are becoming increasingly computable, right? She talks a lot about trees and forests and things like this as being these environments that are increasingly made legible by and for, let's say carbon management through digital technologies. And then, of course, Goldstein and Knost have been, really out there pounding the pavement, talking about this political ecology of data. So again, I'm very indebted to these discourses and how I'm talking about this. My own interest in, let's say, fish farming comes from as you were mentioning there, my sort of wider interest in the environmental politics of digital media. And one of my main case studies over the past few years has been looking at peatlands here in Ireland, where historically, these are sites of subsistence energy culture. As we can see here, these are stacks of dried and drying peat, from small scale turf extraction on Turberry land based on Turberry rights. This is in Donegal. And peat and peatlands hold this kind of huge, let's say, cultural value here in Ireland around their kind of location in the national imaginary in these very long histories of, people in Ireland being kind of treated as, people of bogs, right, by colonial administrators, the bogs being treated as uniquely unproductive land. If you've ever walked on a bog, it's squishy, it's, it's like walking on a waterbed. And these are really unproductive, right? And so how I became interested in how bogs and data overlap is how basically the only way that bogs could be made productive was by the more efficient, let's say early forms of datafication of these places by maps and surveys and things like this, right? So how that is taking shape in, the kind of contemporary moment is that they're increasingly being datafied in and for their potential as carbon sinks, right? They are massive carbon sinks. They hold more, peatlands globally hold more soil carbon than all of the world's forests hold carbon. And, in spite of, the kind of wider spread of forests than peatlands and the kind of more attention that forests get. And so this is becoming very much a site of potential valorization for carbon crediting. And I'm interested in the ways that digital technology is being employed in that. But so that's a long aside to, I was doing field work on the bogs in Donegal, and I came across this very interesting looking installation in a very unexpected place. There were no houses around. I was just kind of driving. It was like me, myself, my car, and some sheep. And essentially round a corner, and there is this industrial installation. I was very interested in what this was. It turns out that this was a fish farm run by the Norwegian multinational fish farming company Mowi, MOWI. And this was situated in the middle of the bogs. I became very interested in this. And what kind of interest, the media scholar Melody Jew talks about how these moments of dislocation are actually really productive, right? Again, turning the corner and seeing this in the middle of the bogs was a moment where I was sort of snapped out of my expectations about what the bogs look like, right? And what these kinds of what green, what the futures of peatlands, might look like. And fish farming in general has been thought about in terms of these kinds of large scale salmon pens, right? Which you see off the coast globally. They're really, really common in the Nordics, also off of, in the coastal areas of the world in general, right? You'll see this a lot off the coast of Chile is a very, very popular place for this, Ecuador, as well as I know places in South Asia. And effectively, what fish farming is and what it requires is a process of domestication, as the science technology scholar Marianne Lin has talked about extensively. She has this one of the more important, let's say, social scientific books about salmon farming is this book that she wrote in, I believe, 2015 about the domestication of this wild animal, which comes with a particular, again, all domestication requires a kind of enclosure. It requires, if you think about the domestication of cattle, historically, right, that required the enclosure of land, changes in land use, changes in particular social relations to this particular animal, right? And she argues that obviously a different process, but what is ultimately domestication is the kind of way that we should think about how salmon have become this kind of site of food production in this domesticated way. Again, like aquaculture is a process of culturing in the same way that agriculture is, right? But increasing research is looking at the ways in which fish are a unique problem, let's say, for domestication, because of the ways in which, especially with salmon and these kinds of open sea pens, right? Again, these are just pens that are in the open water, right? If you've ever seen one of these, they're very obviously porous to the surrounding environment, and in particular, what happens when you get a bunch of fish, when you get a bunch of salmon enclosed in a particular space, is any sort of problem spreads like wildfire, right? So, for example, lice is the major problem in salmon farming. This is not sea lice are a parasite that affects salmon and other fish. And this would not be a massive problem in the wild population. But then as soon as you enclose them into a singular space, these things absolutely thrive, right? And so fish farming has been, kind of a site of contestation in environmental politics for quite a while because of the high levels of loss of salmon, of fish in general, before they reach yield. Because of these, the dangers of the parasites, but also the pollution that occurs and the kinds of, let's say, inability to properly close off the quote unquote wild ecologies from these places, right? And there's been a lot of, kind of increasing discussion, for example, from the science technology studies scholar Bauer in a really recent article from 2024. She talks about how forms of datafication and scientific research within aquaculture industries are being used to increasingly datafy how these particular problems, in order to preemptively optimize fish for more efficient production, right? And this is language that you see reflected across the fish farming industry. So, for example, Mowi talks about how they have a what do you call it? A cloud partner, Cognizant, and in 2020, when they were updating their cloud ecosystem, let's say, they were basically migrating from internal servers in Scotland to the cloud, which is Microsoft Azure. They were basically saying that the digitalization of fish farming procedures was going to more sustainably feed the planet, right? That this was something that what fish farming was uniquely poised to do, but only with kind of robust forms of digitalization. And this is something that then enables the not just datafication, but the application of increasingly efficient forms of, let's say, artificial intelligence and things like this, right? So we have the big techs. Obviously, they get very interested, especially because these partnerships become necessary, right? Where Microsoft and AWS, as I'll talk about in a minute here, and Google, each obviously support the cloud infrastructures of these companies, but they also are increasingly partnering with companies who are interested in developing artificial intelligence for kind of more efficient fish farming. So one of these examples is a company called Nueva Pescanova, which is a Spain-based company specializing in the fishing, farming, and processing and sale of seafood. And they worked with Microsoft to develop a AI platform for basically setting up sensors around their pens. And what they used was they were actually interested in the sound, right? They realized that you could actually track how much salmon we're eating based on the sound. Basically they were talking about like the crunching under the surface, which is an interesting prospect in a particular way, right? But other companies have been more focused on visual underwater perception, right? So this company Tidal, which is a Google, Google X startup, Google X of the balloon internet fame. They're kind of this a startup incubator for harebrained schemes, really. And Tidal is their fish farming version of this, right? So, sorry, how much time do I have here? I'm realizing that I'm going on, and we've got until 10:15, right?
12 minutes.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, sorry, just looking for. I realize because I can't see you on the screen, so I'm just making sure that you're still here, really.
No worries,
Okay.
take your time.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll speak for another, let's say 5 to 8 minutes here or something. But so basically, what they do is they set up cameras around the fish farming pens, right? And what these cameras do is effectively employ a facial recognition technology for, fish, right? Which is, so essentially, like if you've heard of like farm to table, and people are, very interested in how this is a more, that like relationship of yourself to your food, right? To, animal products, right? You can, if you track that from, let's say, like a free range chicken farm or whatever, right? That, you might feel better, or you might feel that that's more sustainable. You might know that this was produced sustainably and ethically, whatever, as ethically as animal foods can be produced, right? But the concept is effectively this, right? Is that these facial recognition technologies will not only optimize, and ensure that, lice parasites are caught earlier, that, feed is optimized so that you're not overfeeding, but also that you can track how ethically your salmon has been produced, right? So again, we're seeing this emerging cloud ecosystem around this, right? But just to kind of start to conclude, which is kind of where I come into this, because again, I sort of gave the aside about my interest in peat bogs and datafication of peat bogs, right? But the way that I actually came to that was because I was interested in data centers and cloud infrastructures, right? And how were these companies partnering with, let's say, scientific and kind of data-driven science organizations interested in carbon mapping and carbon crediting and things, how were big tech companies, kind of instrumentalizing different forms of sustainability in order to effectively license their ongoing deleterious effects on the environment. So I'm sure many of you have seen and are very concerned with, I'm sure, the fact that basically AI is going to require the multiplication of computing infrastructures in order to support its growth, right? And this is something that I've been studying since 2017, right? The data centers and the kind of the environmental consequences of these infrastructures this isn't a new problem. This is something that has been happening since the late noughties, early 2010s, in terms of the kind of explosion of cloud-driven services, right? Whether that's streaming, smart devices, general, the growth of the explosion of social media, and all of these other forms of like enterprise cloud technologies and things like this, right? This has been happening for a decade and a half at this stage. AI is just going to amplify this, right? Because the need for kind of computing to train models and things like this does kind of explode, right? It is something that we are going to see continuing growth, even though in places like Ireland here, we are seeing already the contradictions and the kind of what happens when you basically reach the limit to the growth of a particular infrastructure on a limited grid, right? So just to kind of plug, I've written about this very recently, talking about how these are effectively leading to expanded forms of extractivism in and through green, quote unquote, green technologies, right? And to just come full circle back to fish farming, these things are intricately interrelated, right? So not just through the ways in which fish farming companies are increasingly going to be dependent upon computing and the kind of growth of these, AI-driven mechanisms, but you are also seeing the ways in which tech companies are situating themselves within industrial ecosystems that they become not only necessary to, but integral infrastructures, right? So from energy to data to the production of protein and food itself, right? To the ecological procedures that are supporting growing a growing world population, the kind of the transformation of ecosystems and ecologies at a planetary scale that's already happening because of climate change. Data centers are getting increasingly integrated into the solutions that are emerging out of this, right? And I think that we need to kind of pause and take not a minute, but quite a lot of time to reflect upon what that means for environmental justice when we are just moving forward at this rate of innovation that is completely driven by the growth of digital media infrastructures at a kind of completely unsustainable scale, right? And this is where I think that my research here in Ireland can be instructive, because again, Ireland is a bit of a canary in the coal mine for this, where we are seeing data centers use about a fifth of Ireland's electricity on a daily basis. And this is as of 2022. That number has grown at this stage. And it's leading to enormous transformations on the one hand, but also potential, massive issues of environmental justice because of the ways in which new renewable energy infrastructures are being developed for big tech companies rather than for populations that are really, facing the effects of both climate change as well as climate action, right? Places like rural Ireland that are seeing, the decline of traditional activities such as turf cutting and the expansion of others such as fish farming. We need to think about how tech doesn't necessarily enable these things, but latches onto them, becomes necessary to them, and then requires growth and expansion in ways that are, quite frequently unjust and driven by the profit motives of these companies rather than environmental justice, which is what we need for, kind of an effective and just climate action. So I'll stop there. I will stop rambling on. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Patrick. That was a really exciting presentation, and I myself surely learned a lot about the nexus between sustainability and the imminent digital transitions. And I guess you, as a media scholar as well, how you study the interlocking future of media, of data, and the environment, specifically these specific sites in the environment, such as like the carbon, the bugs as a carbon sink, and techno scientific practices like using computing for fish farming. That is a really interesting case study that you delve on, and overall how we use kind of sustainability to push this transition, to push the edge of the technology in the name of, let's say, green revolution. We also have the blue revolution and the twin transition. So yeah, we have 10 more minutes for the Q&A session. So for everyone who's watching in the YouTube live, you can send out your questions, and I guess we can now take our questions. So from KVDV, what do you think about Web3 when it comes to the datafication of carbon sinks or carbon credits?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And Web3, I assume you're talking about like blockchain and stuff like this, right? Because that's, again, I skipped the blockchain thing. That was something that I was only, sort of marginally interested in, because my interest in Web3 was in, again, the computing infrastructure, right? Because in particular, what was interesting for a while is the fact that blockchain was actually excluded from like the International Energy Agency's measurements of data center energy use, right? And data center emissions. It was not excluded, but it was held as separate from cloud, right? They were like, there's cloud data center emissions and there's blockchain emissions. And blockchain emissions were actually usually a higher proportion, right? In a way that I think is interesting, because it was based on a lot of these sorts of like, mining operations, basically, right? So what was interesting to me was that, sort of the fact that this was, if we're talking about like, data is the new gold, or data is the new oil, then like blockchain was, more like gold, right? It was a dirty, polluting, kind of literal mining industry, right? And I keep saying was, I know that it's still a thing, but it's where I've looked at it a little bit, and this is through the work of other scholars like Xiaowei Wang, who wrote this amazing book. I plug this book all the time, called Blockchain Chicken Farm. And where it's not, the center of the book isn't blockchain, but what Xiaowei talks about is how you have these like forms of high-tech innovation in, the Chinese countryside around things like agriculture, around, traditional kinds of rural livelihoods. It's not just these forms of large-scale datafication. It's also people using blockchain for, let's say, farm to table, but which is exactly what these AI datafication procedures are trying to provide, right? Is through this kind of, increased monitoring of, salmon pens, for example, where you'll be able to kind of see where it came from, how healthy the fish was, all these things. Blockchain was being employed for a similar thing, to basically secure, right? To securely, track where and how your chicken that, arrived on your plate had been treated, right? And again, I think that it's interesting when you look at environmental datafication, because it's, not just in terms of, direct forms of like environmental quantification, but it's also driven by particular kinds of like consumer relationships to, again, it's like even if we look at carbon crediting, every time you buy a flight, they ask you if you want to buy a carbon credit, right? To offset, or a carbon offset, right? To offset your emissions on the flight. And I think that these types of things are really interesting, how we're seeing that, kind of enter into this sphere of kind of everyday consumption. I think that that's kind of where, I mean, that's not my only interest, but that's kind of where I've been thinking about it a little bit, is in terms of these, kinds of consumer relationships to the blockchain, but I haven't thought about it a whole lot. So yeah. Oh, sorry, I think you're muted.
Okay, that's cool. At least we still have one more question, I guess, that we can take. So from Ben, for Patrick, how does a net zero carbon footprint AI system look like, and are we there yet? That's an interesting question.
So how does net zero carbon footprint AI system look like? And are we there? Oh, we're nowhere close to that. Just to be frank about it. The Again, like I talk about this in the paper in that recent data centers paper a bit, in terms of I think that emissions is a little bit of a red herring, to be fair to AI and data, the data center industry that is supporting the growth of AI. That's as fair as I'll be to them, because I think that really what at least the tech companies can say is that they have been ahead of at least the public discourse around, like, we need to make our operations more sustainable, right? And this is because, as soon as it came out how much energy these things were using, the immateriality of the cloud was punctured, right? This idea that this is something that, what our activities, being on live streams and, using platforms every time we open our phone and things like this, the immateriality and ephemerality of these things was punctured quite quickly, especially in places like Ireland, where suddenly it was like, wait a minute, these data centers are using an absolutely enormous proportion of our of the electricity here, right? And I think that where these companies have gotten involved in energy systems and gotten involved in these other kinds of areas around crediting, carbon crediting and things like this, is ahead of a lot of other industries. But what it actually does is amplify the contradictions that occur during a process of decarbonization, which is something that needs to happen. It's multi-sectoral. It happens across multiple geographies. It happened, again, where these datafication processes driven by big tech have, not as much of an impact, but have an impact on the bogs in the west of Ireland, just like they do in terms of our everyday lives and use of these things, in terms of the expansion of smart technologies that are meant to lead us to net zero, in terms of the data centers in suburban Dublin, right? And I think that part of my project with all of this research is to try and understand how these things are ecological beyond sites where they have impact that is, like, very readable, right? Again, a data center in suburban Dublin looks like a data center in suburban Dublin. It's big, it uses a lot of energy, it uses a lot of water, right? In other places, for example, Uruguay, a data center using a lot of water has a lot more localized effects because, they're frequently under drought and water access is, very unequal and things like this. And then, you can also look at a site where a wind farm is being built for a data center, right? That has a very particular impact on that particular place. But I think conceptually, what thinking through something like AI-driven fish farms helps us to do is understand that this is ecological beyond just sites of impact. It's also being integrated into much deeper productive systems that are part of this kind of wider transformation that is coming with digitalization and decarbonization at a massive, again, it has to be across all sectors, right? If this is the transformation. And I think that those sites where we're seeing, kind of rapid change, quantification, datafication, seeing those in relation to these sites of, let's say more traditional kinds of ecological impact, I think is something that's quite important for us to do conceptually. But yeah, sorry, I rambled there. I was trying to connect many different things and give a little bit of credit to these industries, but not too much. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. That was a great talk. And I guess I hope that all of our audience got to understand the implications of how we are using these technologies and the ideas of digitalization to kind of push back, to kind of degrowth. But that there's actually a bigger web or politics behind all of this. So thank you so much, Patrick, and I hope we meet you again.
Cool.
But for now, we will be moving on to our second session.
Cool.
On our second session, we will be discussing resilience and skilling in the emerging AI landscape. Here, we will focus on embracing change and building resilience to navigate uncertainties in the emerging technology landscape effectively, recognizing the inevitability of change and the need for adaptability. All of these we believe in the important that are important for us as change makers. So allow me to introduce to you Dr. Lolly Mansi. Dr. Lolly Mansi is a distinguished anthropologist and AI ethicist hailing from Dublin. Dr. Mansi serves as the Program Director for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the University College Dublin Innovation Academy. With a multifaceted background spanning anthropology and AI ethics, she is not only a renowned keynote speaker, but also an award winning storyteller and entrepreneur. Her expertise lies in progressive education, innovation, entrepreneurship, and organizational learning, making her a pivotal figure in shaping these fields. Hello, Loli. How are you feeling right now? Are you there?
Yeah, hi. No, thanks for having me.
Yes, welcome. Um, how are you feeling?
Yeah, super. I'm actually just off the back of an event last night, which was about AI and storytelling with some people from Google. So, yeah,
Wow,
right in my wheelhouse. Thank you very much for inviting me.
that is really good to hear. So, everyone can't wait for your presentation. So, I think you may now share it, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think it's important as well. I'm going to speak and share slides because I don't want this to be death by PowerPoint. But I think it's really important when we're addressing the idea of change to actually just take a minute to take a breath, because everybody's stressed right now. So academia, industry, students, staff, everybody, right? So it's a case of, where are we at the moment in terms of our society, in terms of our experiences, and also how do we feel about AI? So there's a difference, of course, between AI and generative AI, but of course, anyone since last year has been speaking about generative AI. And so when it comes to that, the fear-based stuff is really important. So an anthropologist in innovation is not that usual. But when I sort of fused these two sort of lines of inquiry together, I started to realize that actually, certainly for the next 5 years, we're going to be really grappling with the idea of how do we fit into this world, the world that we're creating. And at the same time, also, what is our role in an AI world? So I guess I'm doing a lot of speaking at the moment on that, but also looking at how we evolved and what we evolved for and where our best value is added. So if we think that generative AI is going to take away some of the heavy lifting, yay, right? The emails, the sort of the agenda setting, who doesn't want a personal assistant? And that's what AI is at the moment, or certainly becoming. I'm waiting on an R1, which is a little orange block that's coming from Silicon Valley. I'm on the first batch of rollout. They did a live unboxing the other day, and it's a magical AI assistant, right? But of course, it's not magic. It's just trained on LLMs and sort of, data sets. But it feels magic because I will be able to bypass my phone, and just by clicking this little box to get its attention, I'll be able to say, book me a flight, or I'd like to, it's paired with Airbnb, for example. I'd like to go to France on this particular day, find me something and send me some ideas. I can also point it, because it has visual analysis, to be able to say, what is this I'm looking at? So it's the first stage of that, really, of sort of trying to understand how we go from a handheld phone device where we're natural born cyborgs with this, it's an extension of us, to the idea that actually we're going to have an assistant, and yay. Yeah. On the other hand, what we're starting to worry about is, am I bringing in more AI in my work? And if I am, is that AI going to replace me? So that's a big fear in industry. And I think that even behind all of that, it's like bigger questions about what is society going to look like? So they're the kind of things I spend my time with and what keeps me up at night. So the idea of cultivating resilience is really about leaning into the change. We know that change occurs all of the time. It's the only certainty, right? Yes. We haven't had a big change like this. This is industrial revolution style change, right? The digital revolution, whereby we actually have a technology now that is going to be so transformatory. It's going to have positive and negatives, but those decisions haven't yet been made. So we're in the mix of it, and it's unnerving and exciting all at the same time. And I think that we are going to have great possibilities with AI, but also we also may decimate ourselves if we're not very careful. So what I mean by that is, yes, our work life is about to change incredibly. We will have to get past the idea of AI as cheating and have to have the idea of AI as assisting, I think. If I work 7 hours or 8 hours a day and I'm suddenly working 3 because I'm very focused in my productivity because AI is doing the heavy lifting out of the other stuff that we don't really like to do as well most of the time. Am I still working? Am I still getting paid the same amount for working 3 hours? So that's interesting. In educational perspectives, students have always used assistance in terms of going to digital technology since the beginning of it. I actually talked to my daughter's 17. I talked to her about the time before the internet, and she looks at me like I'm Shakespeare. She's like, come on, that's ridiculous. You had to go to a building to find a book. I know it does sound strange, but students have always used things to assist them. And I wonder if we're not missing a trick by sort of saying, okay, we don't really want students to use it. It's not cohesive, our response in education yet. We don't really know how we're responding. We're still adapting to it. So in the world of the speed of things, it's the tech companies first introducing these shiny new things and exciting products. Then it is government legislating afterwards to try and catch up, to say, oh, okay, we now need to really look at this too, to say, and we've passed the EU AI Act, which gives us great potential, because actually now we've got a framework and a rubric by which we need to operate. So that's really important, and I'm really proud of that happening, and it happened very fast in terms of legislation anyway, normally. And now the challenge is for companies and industry to adhere to those guidelines, right? Because they now have to, because it's law. And then education comes a lot later in terms of our change mechanism. So what's interesting with the educational process is we're seen as high risk on the EU AI Act list, but we're also not adapting quickly enough. And so just by saying, if an institution said, let's ban it and let's not have students using it for assessment, what are we saying to the students? And also, how can we actually detect it? So the truth is we can't. We can to a point, but we can't really. So my version of that would be, Pandora's box is open. Let's embrace it, but let's maybe grade harder. Maybe say, okay, be transparent about your use of AI and use it so you don't have blank page syndrome. Ask ChatGPT, what this essay should look like, and then adapt accordingly to your own skill set and your own knowledge. Don't use it to do the work for you, because that is cheating, but use it as a tool for exploring how you think. So I think that's really important. And then also in terms of the way that we teach, personalized teaching can come through AI, teaching, in a completely different style that's much more participatory. And I'm a huge fan of that. The old day of the lecture at the lectern and all the sort of students listening to the expert, that's kind of gone. We need much more participation, or it should be. Yeah. It will be gone fairly soon, I think, with this personalized approach. So we're all in the discussion as well, and we don't yet know what it'll look like. But what I do know is that nobody can afford to put their head in the sand, because it's here and it's happening. And if you do, you're going to be a bit left behind. So going back to your original statement about cultivating resilience, it's about leaning in. It's about having a curious mindset, playful mindset, and saying, okay, let me give this a go. What does this look like, feel like? What can it do? And then I think also we can go to sort of, a theorist like Anne Masden, for example, who explores sort of the sociological dimension of resilience, and the idea of we are here because we're resilient as humans. We wouldn't be here otherwise. We've managed to get through an awful lot of different things, in our history. So we have adaptive coping mechanisms and inbuilt strategies there, and a sort of a self-awareness, and our strong support network as well, which will keep us together. Because as an anthropologist and looking at evolution, we are wired for connection. So we know that we have to have that with other people. So that leads me then on to a whole nother angle, which is the idea of how do we thrive, not just live in an AI society. And I think that comes down to leveraging diversity and inclusion and being innovative and having a mindset of let's explore this. And then also making some decisions around using AI for social good, looking at some of the issues that we have. We have a loneliness epidemic. So how do we leverage AI to help us with that, rather than just going, oh, well, the kids are on their phones. That's they're actually connected in a way, just because you may not feel that yourself. So we started seeing this in education a few years ago, where I would be in the lecture theatre, maybe 350 students, and I was very aware that most people were on a device doing something else, right? This sort of multimodal engagement. But instead of taking that personally as I'm not a great lecturer, I started moving around like a roving reporter around the lecture theatre, going, well, what do you think? And how do you feel? And, like kind of what's your exploration of what we're studying at the moment? And really learning how to engage. And that's transformatory education. That's the idea of progression, integrated, different mechanisms, rather than just listen for 45 minutes or an hour, because they're really not, they're not engaged. So I think that's really important. And then for the future, diversity and the voices from diversity is going to be our absolutely number one best move forward. We know in innovation that the best teams are I say best, I mean the most successful in terms of innovation will be the most diverse teams that haven't come from a very different diverse set of backgrounds and experiences. So we need that sort of approach to help us solve some of the problems with AI. And at the moment, we don't have that. The majority of people that were involved with the inception of the internet were young white males, and we have a very biased internet, and that's what the large language models are learning from, which is this bias. So we very much need to clean the data, and that's happening. But it's a very slow process. It's the whole internet on ChatGPT up to 2021. It's huge. So it's all of our biases, our homophobia, our sexism, our ageism, our ableism is all in there as well. So generative AI is not producing facts that are true. It's producing facts that are an assimilation on everything, an amalgamation of everything. So we have to be very careful how we proceed. And then the last little piece before I show you some slides is about growth mindset. And this is also absolutely fundamental. Carol Dweck is the DWECK, would be the psychologist that I would go to on this, on sort of perseverance. And sort of a passion for lifelong learning in an ever-changing world, really. So, I think it comes down to, we don't have the time to not embrace it. We have to lean into it, whether we like it or not, but let's lean in and see how we feel about it, rather than just ignoring it. I went to Inishturk, which is a small island off the coast of Ireland, the last island before you get to Iceland, actually, that's part of Ireland. 46 people there, 3 children in school, and talk to them about AI. They look at me like I'm an alien, so it's so far from some people's reality. And so we do need to embrace everyone into the conversation, because the voices that are not heard are very, very important, because it's going to affect everybody. But we also still have 2.7 billion people in digital darkness that don't have access to the internet. So that's also going to be really fascinating, because it's about equality of access. On the worry side of what keeps me up at night, I worry about the society we're building if we don't have more diverse voices in it. For example, are we building a society that's going to be very shiny and dystopian and metal, or are we building a society where we repopulate the world with nature and all of the things that sort of, the honeybee, by the way, which was struggling for a while there. We've been tracking that through AI to great success in terms of repopulation. So it's able to fix some of the stuff we've messed up with in the world. Certainly climate, certainly poverty, certainly the big issues around feeding people and famine and the inequalities that exist. I have great hope for it there, full tech optimist. However, slightly negative about the society in case we move, or in my negative worries, in case we move towards a system whereby we don't help people retrain into jobs, and that we don't have a system whereby we have maybe like business hospices where we land businesses, because that needs to come. Taxi drivers, people working in retail, cashiers, that's all going to be replaced very, very soon. So what will that look like for society? Will we have a universal basic income? And if we do, and we all have money, whether we work or not, what will get us up in the morning? Where is our purpose? Will we have a rise in addiction, obesity, depression? I think yes, if we don't make some big decisions. So I have a few slides anyway, just on this that I'll add in here as well.
Sure. You
So,
can start sharing it.
yeah, perfect. Oh, sorry, 1 second. I haven't shared on. Oh, here we go. Can you see that okay?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. 1 second. Well, if I can't access them, I'll send them on to you. Maybe we'll just do it that way. They're really just visual slides about what I'm going to talk about next. Can you see me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So one of the other things that I'm concerned about at the moment with sort of how I'm working is that is the idea that we will not necessarily flourish unless we try to extend what's happening in technology to the next trends that are coming. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Perfect.
Are you trying to share your slides or?
No, I've just gone back
Okay.
to not sharing them now. It's fine. I'll
Okay,
just talk
that's
about
fine.
it. So some of the next trends that are coming are really interesting. So we're going to move very soon from the idea of a phone into a digital assistant, as I've said, and that's going to look very different. We won't need our phones in that way because it'll be able to access my contacts. What it may do is help us stop scrolling, which is really interesting. So a digital assistant, instead, a little sort of box here on my lapel instead of a phone, will mean it'll do all the jobs that my phone would be doing for me, or I would be doing through my phone, but without this sort of doom scrolling part. And when we look at what's happening in our brains, we are kept in sort of this algorithmic version of a Las Vegas casino, right? Which is where we're kept in sort of time blindness on Instagram Reels and other things. And they're designed that way. So they're giving us dopamine hits. And in those dopamine hits, what we're doing is we're getting a little reward system in our brain. It's based on 1960s psychology, and it's kind of keeping us trapped in there to seek out the next reward. We know for a fact that the phone system, or that the sort of social media embeddedness for certain people that are neurodivergent is much more impactful on them. So people that have ADHD, for example, they will need to seek out more dopamine, and therefore they have a predilection to be more addicted to their phones. And it is an addiction because we're sort of kept going backwards over and over again. So we're picking up our phone, and we're touching our phone hundreds of, and sometimes thousands of times a day. And some of the research is looking now at how many hours, of course, that we're there. And it's somewhere about 3.5 hours a day. So if you think your work day is 7 hours, but you're also on your phone for about 3 hours on average in Ireland. If you look at countries like the Philippines or Thailand, they're on their phone up to 7 hours a day. So we have to ask ourselves what we're doing here. I think the next technology will alleviate that to some extent, but that's not going to keep the tech companies happy, because they don't want it to be alleviated, because we're looking at products, of course, all the time. And TikTok being, of course, the biggest platform for business right now. So they've worked out a system whereby in these very small bites, second bites, really, we can get business and products in front of us, so we can be more less aware of it, I think, and sort of lean into it a little bit more. So we have to be very smart as we move forward with all of this. If we continue in the way that we're going, we will see Gen Z being on their phones up to about 18 years of their life. So that's very shocking. And it's not the phones, the phone is not the problem. It's what we're seeking out with it. And so going back to the fact that we're fully wired for a connection in terms of our evolution and anthropology, that leads me on then to other trends that I'm concerned about, like anthropomorphic companions that are coming. The idea of a friend or a companion, a girlfriend or a boyfriend that's digital with an AI capacity. We do have a loneliness epidemic, but I don't think that's the answer. But I think it's the answer that the products, the product companies are going to give us. I think on one hand, it could be beneficial. It might alleviate some loneliness, but at the same time, also, it's not who owns the data of your vulnerability. So that keeps me up. A data company having access to your hopes, dreams, and biggest insecurities that you tell a partner or share with a partner is very dangerous. And we need to be incredibly careful that we don't give this power to tech companies. The other thing we have to be incredibly careful for that's coming is when we move from phone to AI assistant or a wearable. And you can see I've got two here. I've got a watch and a Fitbit, right, for tracking my steps. When we move into the wearable system, we're then going to move very, very quickly into a wearable that's coming on our head. I don't think it's going to be Google Glass, but I don't think it's really going to take off in the way they think. But I think it's going to be some sort of wearable that's kind of maybe here on our foreheads. What's coming then is, and they're already doing this, and it's so Blade Runner dystopian, is having a look at if you can track your intentions, which is a raise in your heartbeat and your pupil dilating, which you cannot control. Your pupil dilating is the Blade Runner thing for the replicants, right? If they can have a wearable that can see that, or to track that, and that is being discussed at the moment and trialed, it's not quite the near Elon Musk's Neuralink, but what it means is that they'll be able to track your intentions to buy something or to like somebody, and that's very dangerous. So when we give tech companies the ability to predict us in that way, in terms of our thoughts, we're in trouble. So in terms of our personal resilience, I would say learn as much as you can. There's so much out there in terms of trends and what's coming, and it's so interesting. But also remember, the shiny new thing might have an added sort of extra to it that you're not expecting. So just before I wrap up, and we go to questions, I think one of the things we have to be a little bit careful about is Google released an AI phone last year. And it's just an example of taking care and sort of being active rather than passive in your consumerism. Google released this, and it went with a free wearable, and the phone was $1,800, but they only released it in the States, Japan, Germany, and the UK. Why? Tech-savvy countries, but it was an experiment, the biggest tech experiment that we've had yet in terms of a wearable. With the phone, when you're looking at your phone, the wearable picks up your heartbeat. What they're doing is tracking that data and owning that data of what you like and what's exciting you. So it's already started to happen, and we are giving them this data because we just go cookies, yeah, accept, yeah. We just give everything away. What we have to be super cautious about is that we are not giving away our personal thoughts, because then we're in very scary territory. So I'll stop there because I know that we might have some questions.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And I really like that you started with focusing on the two typical responses that we make when we encounter AI, like relieved of AI taking some of our work, and then fear as well. So I just want to jump onto the questions right now to see what our audiences are feeling. So here we have Quinta Revana, and she asked, can you please give an example on how does an anthropologist integrate qualitative methods and big data for AI ethics research?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because if we're talking about qualitative, we're looking at humans, right? We're body storming, we're observing, it's ethnographic, it takes a very long time. You're observing people in the field. So I think where it's getting integrated is in the ways that we're using it. So one of the very first companies in Ireland to use it was Intel. And Intel started, because anthropologists before weren't really employed in tech companies. Intel looked at tech and started to say, okay, we need to see how people use it. It's not just how we create it, it's actually how it's implemented, because very often technology is not used in a way that we would imagine. And so we adapt to it in a different way. So we are looking at qualitative data on the what I'm personally looking at, and how we integrate this is the idea of when you're talking to people about things like artificial intelligence, like initially, if you're looking at surveys and qualitative work, you'll just get the data that just kind of is very sort of surface level. When you're using qualitative data in terms of AI and actually having conversations, it's storytelling. This is, goes back to the very first thing that we evolved to do, which is to tell stories around the fire to each other, before we even had written communication. People really want to tell stories. So I think the companies that are doing the best at the moment with this are those that are sitting around saying, okay, let's tell stories about the things that are working, not working. Let's have a look at where AI aligns to what we want and what we need, and those two things being very separate. Companies are saying at the moment, let's sprinkle a bit of AI magic on everything and make it all wonderful. That's not how it works. And it's not magic. It's got problems. It's very biased. It's hallucinating. We don't really understand how it's working. This is also a bit of an issue. So my role and the role of sort of the social scientist, and by the way, I was at an event with the Nobel Prize winners a little while back in The Hague, and we are all and they are all talking about the need for historians that know about AI or integrate AI, philosophers, sociologists, musicians, artists. It's not just a tech thing. It's actually an everyone thing. And we have to integrate our own subjects in with it. What can we learn in terms of history, in terms of where we've gone wrong in the past, and AI? What can we look at? Philosophy and AI is absolutely fundamental as we move forward to try and understand. And as well, if we end up in a world where we've all got more time, won't that be wonderful? So can we not have artistic, creative pursuits? Because that will make the world nicer for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I really like your point where you highlighted how technology is not a conventional field, and we should tap as much as possible to all kinds of discipline as well.
That's fundamental if we're going to have a society that flourishes. Otherwise, we're going to have a society created by tech bros. So that's fine, but we don't all want that sort of gaming style, So, I think it's really important everybody gets a word. Yeah.
Yeah. So for our second question, we have here Stefano Zaniboni. According to your expertise, what would be the most important generative AI skill that universities should plan to transfer to students to make them citizens that will be resilient to this constant change?
Yeah, I mean, the universities are also struggling with how to navigate this world, right? I mean, in terms of the school system as well. I think there's a very straightforward one, and then there's a one that's a little bit sort of more shiny. So the very straightforward one is we need to teach critical thinking, no question, and it needs to be from primary level. I'm involved with a group called the Digital Enlightenment Society in The Hague, and we're looking at Finland and at Scotland, who've both been teaching critical thinking in primary schools in the last 5 years to great success. So we're looking now at an initiative to roll that out, but it's a little too late if we're already at third level to start teaching critical thinking. Discernment of thought, we can trust nothing. Because of deepfakes, we can trust nothing. So how do we have healthy mistrust? And what does that look like rather than the paranoia side? So I think that's one very, very strong thing that's coming through all of the fields at the moment is we need to understand how to deal with information and misinformation and not to just be trusting fools, as it were, as we have been potentially in the past. And then the other one that's a little bit more shiny is for us all to become digital citizens. It's coming anyway. So the idea that you can log into your classroom, as a digital citizen with all of your experiences and your style of learning and your educational experience will be tailored for you. Maybe you like to work late at night. Maybe it's coming through an asynchronous engagement. Maybe you don't want to see the lecture. Maybe the lecture is an avatar or a cat or something. That's all coming. So how we get you ready and how we respond at the moment has to be around those core skills: critical thinking, problem solving, curiosity. And then also for us as educators to say we don't have the answers and to actually say we're learning ourselves. And I think that's a really good place to start, the start of vulnerability and the fact that we should be all having an open conversation. And then lastly, for the students themselves to have a voice. And this is not something that's happened, regularly, where students themselves will say, we need to be part of those discussions about what our education looks like and design it with you, not just for, have us design it for them. So I think it's really important, a more egalitarian approach.
Thank you so much, Loli. And we are honored to have you as our speaker and learn about the value of this being resilient in this very, unexpected phenomenon right now, and being adaptable as well. Something that we can really take as we get through our next topics as well. Again, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's break time. Please take this opportunity to stretch, as Loli reminded us, to breathe, grab a refreshment, or engage in a quick chat with fellow attendees. Before we go, we would also like to congratulate the new cohort of the TSEP program. We actually now have our fourth cohort, cohort 2024 to 2026. If you are there in the YouTube chat, make yourself seen and we will give you a shout out once we get back. We will resume our session by 11 a.m. Enjoy your break, and we look forward to continuing our discussions shortly. Hello, hello. I'm John, and we're back for the second half of our program. And I hope you are all still there. I hope you had your coffee break or your lunch break, and you are really rested well for that 10 minutes that we gave you. Just a reminder for the people who raised their comments and questions on the YouTube Live, in case the speakers didn't get to answer your questions, our team will be taking note and we will send it to them. So now let's get going to our third session. In this session, we will explore the innovation, insights, and tools needed by learners and higher education institutions to adapt to the ever evolving scale demands in the AI industry. It involves learning from experiences where unique challenges and innovative solutions contribute to shaping a more robust and adaptable AI landscape. So for this session, let's welcome our speaker, Martin Serrano. Martin Serrano is the Director of Operations at QS Employability. He is keen to continue to drive innovation, equip learners in higher education institutions with the tool and insights needed to adapt to the ever-evolving scale demands of industry. So hello, Martin, are you there?
Yeah, hey John, how are you?
Hi, where are you based right now and how are you feeling?
I'm great. I'm based in London. Very excited about being part of the Back to the Future conference.
Thank you so much. So I guess now you can start your presentation if you can. Just share your presentation on the and on our platform.
Amazing. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, perfect. So the floor is yours.
Amazing. Well, John, thanks for having me. Very excited to be a part of these and share a bit of what we see, how the world of education is changing, and how we can actually better support universities, government, and students stay on path with their career goals. So I'll start with a very quick background on myself. Actually, I am from Ecuador originally, born and raised. And before being part of QS, we actually started a startup with my two of my best friends from high school from Ecuador. And the idea for the startup is exactly what we're doing now at QS. The startup was called One Mentor, and specifically is how we can equip today's learners for tomorrow's work. So it's been an amazing journey. The whole team is based in Latin America. And as I'll go through my presentation, I'll touch on the point that overall, these challenges that we are facing of the global skills gap, it is a global problem. And we've seen it across industries, across countries and continents. So it's been a great experience for us to be able to build a team in South America that has been able to service and support learners and institutions across the world. So now, after One Mentor, now that One Mentor has become a part of QS, what is QS? I'll give you a very quick breakdown, but they've been working for over 30 years across institutions and across countries in order to provide them with data and insights on what are the demands from students and learners in the world, like what type of programs they want to go into, and help universities find these students to help to equip them and bring them on to different careers. So I'm gonna stop sharing my presentation. I want to start with a very quick video for everyone to kind of set the tone of what is happening in the world right now. So I know you've all probably heard about Sora. You can still see my screen, correct? And Sora is one of OpenAI's new tools that's coming up, and it is fantastic. So I'm just gonna press play to give you a bit of what it does. So essentially what's happening here is you can type in a specific sentence into Sora or a paragraph describing what you want the video to do. And actually the AI is able to create a video on demand of everything that you type. So why am I showing you these? And just to go back to the presentation, specifically what we are seeing is that the world of work is changing extremely quickly. What Sora is doing right now used to take a team of at least 5 people and probably around 100 hours to do. And just to show you a bit of how quickly technology and the world of work is changing, you can put in the comments, but my question for you is, from the companies and the logos that you see on the screen, what do you think it's the commonality that they all have? I actually can't see the comments, but happy if someone from the team can let me know maybe some of the guesses that the viewers have. Uh, but to just give you the answer, none of these companies existed um, over 25 years ago. So actually, besides Netflix and Google, most of these came up only 20 years ago. And it is, or they are, some of the big logos, companies, tools that we use now on a daily basis. And I think it'll be pretty difficult for us to imagine a world in which these are not a part of. So what is it that I'm kind of talking about? And it's the fact that the world is in constant change. There's a very rapid pace of transformation that we're seeing in the skills that are needed for the workforce. So the World Economic Forum, which analyzes what employers need across the world, they have found that 44% of the workforce will need to be upskill or reskill by 2027, which is only 3 years from now. And this means that there's going to be 85 million jobs being eliminated and 69 million jobs being created. So, in a very quick question for you, how are we going to be able to equip students or the workforce with skills for jobs that we still don't even know what they're going to be? And for those that are going to be eliminated, like as we saw with Sora, how can we train or retrain our workforce and students to be able to use these new tools so they can adapt when their roles keep changing? And some very key statistics to share with you is that currently about half of the college graduates are working jobs that don't use their degree. So this is really showing that we have moved on to a skill-based economy. And this unsettling truth shows that there's a big disconnect about what are companies looking for, what are companies valuing degrees as. And it is a huge signal of a crisis in confidence in how higher education is currently working. To show you a bit more of what was really coming up, is how does this translate then to the companies looking for talent? And in just the last 5 years, we've seen that more than half of companies are now not prioritizing university degree when looking for talent. Instead, the key thing that they're looking for are what are the skills that you have, what's the work experience that you have, so how have you put these skills in practice? Because they're really looking for talent that can immediately come in and start working and have an impact instead of them having to retrain or train all these talent. And actually, this graph shows that as you see non-degrees or these kind of new ways of learning coming up in just after the year 2000, they are growing and will be soon outpacing the number of bachelor's degrees being offered. When I say non-degrees, these are courses, badges, boot camps, micro-credentials, professional certifications, in a way, different ways of learning and acquiring skills that is not just going to a 4-year or 2 to 4 or 5-year institution to get a degree in a specific subject. So essentially, like what we are posing to universities and telling them what's the big question is, imagine that currently the world is no longer looking at what degree you have in order to hire you, but what's really, really valuable is how quickly can you evolve and adapt to new challenges that are posed to you? How can you stay in a way on path and learning new skills just as quickly as technology is evolving, just as quickly? So we have seen across industries that everyone is using data. So you see Netflix, for example, using AI algorithms to give you recommendations of what type of shows to watch. With Spotify now, they even have a personal kind of Gen AI assistant that will recommend you new songs and so forth. And overall, we see it across healthcare, across tech, across businesses. Data and AI are being used, but the only area where we've seen there's a lower uptick on it is on higher education. So what is really happening with higher ed? And one of the key things that we see and we tell universities that you can't improve what you don't measure. And at this point, universities have been very focused on the input. So how many PhD professors do they have? They have been trying to measure actually what is coming into the university instead of really asking the question to their students of what are the outcomes that they expect from the investment in education. And what we really need to start transforming education into is to start measuring on the delivery of the outcomes of students. I would love for you to put it in the chat, but as you came into this program that you're in, what were like the top 2 motivations that you had? I know some people will probably go into further education, research, but I would argue that the largest amount of students in these programs that are probably watching this webinar came to study in order to advance their career, to maybe change jobs, to change locations and find a new job. So what we're really posing universities to start doing is to measuring how they're delivering on the outcomes of what jobs are students landing, what are they related to their subject, to what they're studying, are the students earning decent salaries, and how are they tracking if the education is actually as accessible? So this was the question that we were posing ourselves when we were starting One Mentor. We were working in universities, we were recent graduates, and we saw that when we were coming and looking for those jobs, the biggest constraint that we had is that we didn't have the skills that actually the jobs needed. So I studied architecture, for example, and I was looking to be an architect. My first few months working, I realized that I didn't know most of the tools, software that I had to know to be efficient at it. And this is shared across students. I'm sure you guys might also have some of those same experiences. But what Mentor does specifically is we're looking to equip universities and government with data across 3 main areas that they can then use to make strategic decisions. And as you have heard my conversation, you're going to see that one of the key things is really understanding what does the labor market mean? So what are employers and industry looking for? What type of skills are they putting in practice? The second component would be for higher education to listen and understand their students. So what are my students that are coming to study in my different programs? What are they looking to do after they graduate? What type of careers do they want to follow? What type of skills gaps do they have? And lastly, for the university to really understand what are they offering? Am I a university that's focused in STEM? Am I a university that works across the board? Or are my strengths liberal arts? Am I one that adapts very quickly to new areas to use, for example, in the digital arts? So how can the universities really understand how their offerings align with student needs and then satisfy labor market requirements? And One Mentor sits exactly at the intersection of all of these. So we gather data from the labor market and students and analyze offerings from university to be able to give universities insights and data across these 3 data points for them to use it to enhance student experience, evolve academic offerings, evolve their marketing and communications, also understand admissions. So what type of students am I attracting? And lastly, when we look at the areas of alumni and lifelong learning, is really how can we start delivering education across everyone's life cycle? So not just while you are in university, but how can you stay on pace with new changes that are coming as you're already working? Are you going to be coming back to university for a short time to, in a way, adapt and enhance your skills? Or is it something that you can learn while you're still working? So how are we actually doing these? And here's where we started very manually. And I'll tell you actually the whole story. But the way that we are using AI to pace disruption is first we're looking at job postings. So now we have analyzed over 200 million job postings and we continue to ingest data in real time. But initially, it was 2 of us looking at a huge Excel sheet, manually trying to understand what are the skills that employers look for in different jobs, what are the skills students have, and then how can we start mapping them? So that's the other component. We are also looking at student profiles and curricula to understand what skills are students bringing on. And then through machine learning algorithms, we can understand what are the gaps that these students have. What are the gaps that curricula, so offerings from universities have? And then through AI recommendation engines, we can give you 2 different platforms. On the one side, the one used by students that we call the learner, because the idea is that you use it across all of your life. And lastly, the one for the universities, which is providing analytics, and we call it the One Mentor Advisor. And to explain to you what does this actually do? So as we ingest data from the labor market, these 200 million job postings, we can understand a great variety of all the careers that are out there. So the first thing that we help students do is understand what are different career paths that align to their interest, to their studies and their existing strengths. So essentially, Students are able to come in, and based on what is the degree that they're studying, they'll find recommendations based on what other students have been able to go and do. So you can go and see, hey, if I'm studying a program in business, what are the type of jobs that people from this degree are coming out and getting? A lot of times people are very, very narrowly focused. For example, again, with architecture, I thought the only thing I could do in the world was to become an architect. And later on, I actually found that I went to urban planning, to development, real estate, which were things that are not really communicated to students. So how can we help them understand actually all the value that their programs are giving them? Second, we can also use their own skill sets and say, hey, you're already, based on your passion or another program that you took, you already have a few skills that you can use. So maybe these other areas are something that you can go into. Then once the student selects a specific career, we can then show them what are the skills and competencies that are required by industry. So as you can see on the middle of the screen on the right, we're going to show you exactly what are the skills that you have. And imagine these get updated in real time. So if suddenly industry is going to start using a new tool, for example, ChatGPT and so forth, we're going to see it very quickly start moving into these skill sets. And students are going to be able to get this recommendation directly, even maybe before the university has adapted their courses, so they can stay on pace with the changes of industry. And lastly, because of that fact, we'll be able to then show exactly what courses you can take to develop any of the skills gaps that you have. So that even if your university has the course, we'll show you through the university. But if it doesn't have it, we can complement it so that the experience that you have at the university is very complete and you can then go and achieve that career dream that you have. The second thing now is how can we start intersecting all of these data points to provide information to higher education? So we're going to take all the data that we have from job postings, what are the skills needed, and then we're going to start looking at what are the skills that students communicate. So we give this industry knowledge to strengthen current programs and launch new ones for the university. They'll know exactly that I'm going to launch a new program in data science. I'll know what type of jobs I should be able to allow my students to get. Then I can look at what skills they're required and how I can create courses or use existing courses to teach those skills. Second, we're going to start capturing all of the points of data from the students. So what type of jobs do they want? And as you can see on the middle of the screen again, we'll show these objectives to the university. So they can then go and find the employers that can bring these opportunities to their students, or they can direct them throughout their current connections for the students to find these careers. We can also then use these as a university to communicate actually outcomes. And we can also use it to attract new students and show them that we understand actually what applicants are interested in. And lastly, it's this idea of personalization of learnings again. So on the third point, we deliver data-enabled career guidance for students to provide personalized objectives. So imagine a career advisor now being able to look at any student's profile and understand exactly what jobs does this student want, what skills do they have, how can I give them courses from my university to develop and get them ready to get that job. And for the AI to be smart enough to keep giving these recommendations in a personalized manner to every student. So regardless of you sharing the same major, it can adapt to all of your specific needs or all the skills that you have learned individually. And a bit of the use of the platform now, so the impact, we gather a bit of the quotes that we have seen from students. And I put it in the middle, I think one of the most important ones, but the idea that one mentor gives people the possibility to have a tool that reveals what companies are looking for in employees and also how to reach those standards. The key thing here, as you see, for example, is that we are exposing shortcomings that students didn't know they had. We're showing them in a very personalized way. What do they have? How do they line up against the careers that they want? And how they can then go and achieve these. And it is this personalization that is going to be the future of education. So based on how quickly things are changing, even universities are stating that to be able to provide these personalized insights and recommendations to students, it's going to be the turning point so that we can keep them at pace with the future of work, with the rapid changes, and so everyone can actually be at the driver's seat of their career and their goals. And that is what I have for you for today. I left 10 minutes for questions and I'll stop sharing screen to be able to look at comments.
Thank you so much, Martin. This is a really nice transition from our previous session that could kind of encourage us to explore how we could use technology in our daily lives, how we can adapt to it, and how we could go above and beyond the technical systems that are embedded into our daily lives. And I'm happy that you found a space or this possibility for a future where we use this technology into the employment or employability sector. So actually, I have a personal question that I guess one of our audience also kind of raised. So what are you doing to kind of make this capacity or capability, this advice and insights more accessible to everyone? And I guess this is also connected to what Mariana Hill is also asking in our YouTube chat. How are you using this technology to kind of share all of these benefits, not only for English speaking countries but also for other contexts?
Yeah, so I think that's one of like the key things, and that's why I started actually giving a quick background on myself and the team at One Mentor that have been able to do these. We started actually working in Canada and the US, but we very quickly saw that this was a worldwide problem. So we have already been moving to Latin America. So we are working across 6 countries in Latin America. We're already having conversations with areas, for example, in India, in Africa. So clearly, it is our goal to keep expanding the language. Right now, we're already serving Spanish and English. We have Portuguese coming in the pipeline. So it is a tool and a technology that can easily scale across different languages and locations, mostly because it is a challenge that we're seeing across the world. Um, John, I know you had a question. Do you mind just rephrasing very quickly what was specifically your question?
Oh, I guess Mariana was focusing more on how One Mentor and QS are going to make sure that this is accessible to all languages as well. But also, I guess for me as well, how about the other types of inequalities as well? So how are you going to ensure that this is accessible for everyone?
So the key thing here is, as we're looking at jobs across different industries, we're started right now with kind of the jobs that are more connected with like university and bachelor degrees, but we are quickly looking that we can also expand to actually the great majority of jobs out there. So those into trades and so forth. So we're ingesting also that data to be able to actually give you recommendations across industries. And imagine, for example, if you then work with the government, and this is something that it's given to high school students from a very early on age, or across public institutions, community colleges, you can have these personalized recommendation engine to help you understand what are the opportunities that I have and work together. It is not just a single company's job to do this, but it is how can we start collaborating and bring together employers, government, and institutions to work on supporting the workforce.
That's nice. So I guess we have a second question now from Anna Weber. How do you strive a balance between informing students and giving them ideas, yet not to making them overwhelmed with choices and uncertainty?
Yeah, so that is actually a very great question. And I'll pick up a bit on the experience that we have. So for example, when we look at like very early students, so those just coming into different programs, they have no idea what they want to do, and they really say, hey, like there's a lot of information, what type of jobs do I want? But we see that very quickly, as we actually limit the number of occupations that you can kind of track, they start narrowing down and really going into a single career or a few to focus on. So the way that we're giving them information is that we're looking at all of the career objectives, and the recommendations of skills are what is the next best skill that you can learn that would help you across all of your objectives. So that in a way, we're giving them the fastest path to be ready to every goal that they have. And these works very well as they move across the university. They have other experiences. For example, they go into internships and such. They start focusing much more, and they can always find what is that next best recommendation. But it is a key thing for us to keep working with students, understanding, hey, are these actually recommendations that they can then use and not get overwhelmed?
Okay, good. So we actually have 5 minutes more for questions. So if you guys have more questions, please feel free to put it in our YouTube live. But for our next question, we have KVDB. What is the most surprising link between university degree and job skills you have discovered in this process? That's an interesting question. What did you find out?
So I would say there's actually two things that I want to talk about. So one of them is a very cool thing that we've seen is prompt engineering. So actually, in a way, ChatGPT is a very growing field. And some of the most in-demand students for those jobs are non-tech students, but actually English majors. And this is because they're very well suited to adapt in prompting. So actually being able to understand what's the best way for me to write a sentence to get what I need. So giving commands in a way. So it's very cool because these are very new occupations that are growing very quickly, that are expanding into majors that no one had thought about, which is, for example, English. And in the future, we'll see, for example, Spanish if someone's using this technology in different languages. But it is non-tech related, which is fantastic. And the second one would be actually how broad number of career objectives students have, even within a single uh, major. So, for example, we take 24 students that are studying psychology in the same class, same university. They have over 24 different jobs or careers that they want to go into. So some of them want to be UI UX designers, some of them want to go into consulting, some want to go into psychology, other ones want to go and work in public service. So it is impossible. For example, the quote of Zaha Hadid says there is like, you can't really just group every student in one major as one same thing because they all have different experiences and interests. So in a way, how can you really stick with one solution for everyone?
Wow, that was the first one was a free insight. Has anyone been has now been thinking if they're gonna shift into an English major or take another master's degree in English? But yeah, okay, we can still take up another question again from KVDV. Is this technology for university students only, or have you expanded to other groups?
So we have already expanded to people that are already in the workforce. So professionals that are probably 5 years out, 15 years out. And we see that actually the metrics that we get are even stronger. So a lot of them say, hey, I've already been doing this job or this career for 5 years. And I see that things have changed very quickly. There's new technology or I need to like stay on path with new skills. And they come in, they find the courses and they want something very quickly. They don't have the time to go search in the website, in the internet, or like what type of programs, evaluate all of them. They want to come in, find the solution, get upskill, and continue working. So we have already expanded to professionals. The next step would be high school students. So even before going to universities or community colleges and so forth.
That's nice. One of our audience, I think it's a remark from the previous question. He said he will now surely take a course in prompt engineering based on what you said. So last question, I think, from Ope Abenego Brandy. Do you already have any results for job outcomes for students in your program or your partner institutions?
That's a fantastic question. So actually, we don't currently have the specific job outcomes in terms of how many students have been able to get jobs. As you can tell, universities are very protective of that data because they want to say that there's quite a few different inputs into it. But what we're doing though is we're working to work on longer time kind of projects with universities to kind of follow the students and really measure what is the impact of this tool across the years for students. So we'll be having that data probably hopefully by the end of this year as we have fully closed a 1 year cycle with some students.
That's good. I think you have a lot of questions. The next one that we have here is from Andrea Forero. So I think we can still accommodate a lot of questions at the current moment. So Andrea asked, do you think that the uncertainty of looking for a career or a job is also part of the process of self-recognition and identity building process? How do you reconcile these visions with one mentor?
That is a fantastic question, Andrea. So one of the key things that we see is the process of you trying to find a career in that is not just what you're good at, but really what is it that you enjoy your time doing? What do you think, for example, the world needs and so forth? And but we are looking to reconcile these in one mentor is there's this model called the Ikigai model, which is actually a Japanese model that is looking to really kind of understand what are you good at, what is it that you would like to do, what do you enjoy your time, and what do you think the world needs. So how can you give the best to the world but also being happy in it? And we're using these as a discovery path so that we can then recommend you different careers. But it is very key, that part of self-reflection. I think one of the key things is what you do doesn't define who you are. So that idea that you are much more than your job, and that's also something that we want to share, because that idea of lifelong learning, that you can continue across your life, changing careers, and you can use this tool to tell you like, hey, do you want to stop being an architect and go into being a tech entrepreneur like I did? We can show you like, hey, these are maybe the key things you want to learn. So I think that is something that you can keep evolving as a person and finding new opportunities and things to do, and we can just be part of that journey.
Wow, that was really interesting that you kind of embedded as well the Ikigai philosophy from, I think it's also from Japan. This idea of passion, mission, profession, and vocation, and all of these are not the things that define you, but the intersections of all of these spaces in your life that will it's not actually that defines you, but what will make you happy and joyful, and kind of finding that perfect balance, the common ground between all of those are perfect. We still have a lot of questions, so I think sorry,
No,
are
no,
you
no.
okay with taking
It's
more?
totally fine. I don't know how much time you guys have. I still have probably like 5 more minutes.
Okay. Then our next question would be from BN. As much as this initiative is promoting the streamlining of education and acquirable skills, how does it prevent pigeonholing of talents and cross trainability now or in the future to come?
Yeah. So um, that's a great question. Also, I think actually what we're trying to tell universities and showing is that we're trying to move away from the idea that one specific degree will give you one specific outcome, but the fact that there are things that are skills that are changing across jobs, and you need to be able to very quickly change that. And we can then show you what of the skills that you have work on other areas. So the idea is that industry is going to keep evolving. And for example, data science now, most of the universities are taking data science out of their engineering departments or computer science departments. They're making their own department that works across all the universities. So it's fully interdisciplinary, because they see the data science something that's going to be used in every single industry now. So really, I think that we are not pigeonholing anyone, but it is showing to students and universities that skills are going to change, that you're going to start using tech stuff for other areas, that you're going to start using human skills. So actually, like communication, teamwork, and all of these things that are, for example, very prominent in the liberal arts, but maybe not so much in STEMs, that you're going to use these actually in all the tech jobs as well. Ethics, for example, is one of the big topics coming in AI, and we're seeing it popping in job postings. So I think what we're coming to see is that you need a very well-rounded individual in terms of the human skills, and maybe you can very quickly stack up those technical skills, and you can change them just as quickly as things change. You can go learn something else, and you're ready for it. So I think it's actually broadening opportunities for everyone, more than pigeonhole and telling them this is the only thing you can do. Because to be honest, it might go obsolete in just 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, that's a good realization. Like, especially that of all our skills and talents are fluid and flexible as well, and that opportunity that we have might should are now broadening as well, like the requirements that are being asked by the industry or the academe. So thank you very much, Martin, for your time and your wonderful presentation. I hope you have a good day ahead and see you again.
Amazing. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you. So now we're moving on to our last session titled Empowering Global Citizens, Integrating AI Technology in Brazilian Education. Here we will discuss the scope of empowering global citizens in integrating AI technology in Brazilian education. It navigates both a theoretical approach and practical aspects of the use of artificial intelligence. So let me welcome our speaker, Felipe Gonçalves. Felipe is a professor and researcher in education. He specializes in learning mediation to provide meaningful knowledge experiences. He works with various contexts, including companies, third sector organizations, and educational institutions, focusing on creating ethical and transformative experiences in people's lives through education. Hello, Felipe. How are you? And can you hear me?
Hello, good morning. Nice to
Hi,
meet
good
you.
morning. What time is it there? And where are you based right
Now
now?
it's 7:30.
Oh, that's nice. So I guess you can now start your presentation if you
Okay.
are ready. Just click present and then you're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Let me do this. Start my presentation. And now it's here.
Yes, we can see it now.
Perfect. So let's start. I'm a little bit nervous to talk with all of you, but I'm very glad to be here. My name is Felipe, and now I'm going to share you some ideas from what is happening here in Brazil, and maybe what we can think about our present, and also considering what we are trying to build in the future. And the title of my presentation is Empowering Global Citizens, Integrating AI Technology in Brazilian Education. So, who I am? My name is Felipe, as I said in the beginning, and I'm Bachelor of Social Sciences. I did this at the University of São Paulo. I also have the master degree in education, did also at the University of São Paulo. I'm co-founder of the Ensino Outro, where I create experiences of empathy, and I work on education from since I finished my undergraduate skill, and I coordinated the creation of the leadership curriculum at Intelli, the Institute of Technology and Leadership, where I work as professor. And my purpose in my job is building a world where all the people belong. So here I'm going to share you some ideas of considering this purpose. And my argument is that educational field is changing because of AI, but essential issues remain the same. And to do this, I'm going to share 5 topics. The first one is an overview about the Brazilian context of education. The second one is how AI is being used in Brazil. The third and the fourth is sharing with you an experience of what we are doing at Intelli. And the last session will be thinking about the future. So what can we integrate AI and what we must consider to create technology solutions, but not only this, but educational solutions considering technology. So what's the Brazilian context? Maybe you all know this man. I don't know if you recognize him. His name is Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire is very important for us here in Brazil. He was born in 1921 and his death was in 1997. And he is a very important educator for us because he considered the context of our reality. And in 1968, he wrote a book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And this book represents some aspects or some values that our context, educational context here in Brazil must consider when we are creating educational solutions. And Paulo Freire has some influences in his thinking. The first one is the Marxism. The Marxism helps Paulo Freire to understand the context of inequality here in Brazil. The second influence I'd like to share you is the New School movement that came from the United States, according the thinking of John Dewey. John Dewey is an educator, is an American educator that helps us to build an active methodology. The third influence on Paulo Freire's thinking is the Catholic thinking. And the Catholic thinking helps Paulo Freire to understand ethical aspects of the human relationships. And now I'm going to share you a point of view, some considerations about these 3 main aspects. So considering inequality, you can see this picture, right? Here is a school in Brazil, but this is also a school in Brazil. So There is a huge difference between the first picture and the second picture. Of course, there is a teacher, of course, there are many students, but the infrastructure is very different. And when Paulo Freire wrote Pedagogy of the Oppressed, he considered the context of the illiteracy here in Brazil. Almost 40% of our population didn't know how to write and didn't know how to read. And what Paulo Freire did, he said, oh, how people learn how to read and how to write. Maybe you know some paper like this. This is an example of the phonic method. Phonic method is a way where we teach how to read and how to write. So we take a word. This example is barriga, which means belly. And belly, what we do considering this word? We put words together, we put syllables together, and from this we learn how to read and how to write. And many of our students here in Brazil learn this process according to this book called Caminho Suave. And what Paulo Freire was thinking, when he uses this material, he considers that people, maybe it's not the best word to start this process of learning. The best words we must consider is the words that people use in their own day-by-day life. And here is the example what he did. Here is a man learning how to read, learning how to write, and he's with his son or his daughter. And here is an active learning methodology. How it's an active learning methodology? Because you can see that there is a word right here, which is tijolo. Tijolo means brick. He's a worker. And what's the Paulo Freire innovation? He took the words that comes from the knowledge of the students. And this is hugely different because when he does this, he is considering all the knowledge of all the people. And it is very important. That's why we can say that the Brazil displays a context of educational innovation. Because you remember those photos. The first one is a Tupinambá school. What is Tupinambá? Tupinambá is one of our indigenous people here in Brazil. And the second one is a technology school. And both of those experiences consider the context of the students. Here, if you can say, there are many draws of the students. And here is an indigenous teacher. It's a bilingual methodology of the Tupinambá school. But here, there are also students working together in an active methodology and in a problem-based learning. You know, both of those experiences have many things to teach us how to create good experiences for our students. And here in Brazil, we have a huge debate about what is the purpose of education. In some aspect, people can consider that education changes the world. But we also can consider that education maintains important values for our society. And the first perspective is done by our left position, our left policy position here in Brazil. And the right one is the right. There is this debate, but even if we consider that education changes the world or if education maintains values, in both cases, we are thinking about, wow, what kind of education we must offer to our students for the new generations. And here I'd like to show how AI works in such context. According to the professors Durso and Arruda in this study of 2022, they say that there are three main ways of using AI in education here in Brazil. The first one is using intelligent tutoring systems. The second one, adaptive systems and personalizations. And the third one is assessment and evaluation. And it all represents 76% of all of uses of AI in Brazil, according the researches done in 2022. And it is about the use of AI, but we must consider also the producing this technology is tools. And why producing is also important? Because maybe we are not creating solutions that in fact work for the people. Because many of those research they don't come from education. They come from engineer field. So how can we teach technology considering these aspects? To answer this question, I would like to share with all of you an experience of what we are doing at Intelli. Intelli is an institute that we offer 4 undergraduate schools or 4 undergraduate courses for our students. And we seek to change the Brazilian context through technology. The inequality, we offer a huge educational scholarship for our students. The methodology, we work with the project-based learning methodology. And considering ethics, we teach global citizenship skills for our students. And this is very important, and I'd like to share you what is global citizenship skills for us. We teach 4 main abilities to our students. First one, acting respectfully and equitably. Second one, thinking and acting ethically within the context. The third one, producing sustainable solutions. And the fourth one, understanding power relations. And how can we produce sustainable solutions? Here is an example. In our model, we don't have disciplines. What we have is terms in which our students must prototype technological solutions for some real partner. Here is an example. Our students of computer engineer, they had to create a self-service robot for Ambev. Ambev is a beverage corporation here in Brazil. And this self-service robot had to work at the Ambev warehouse. And when our students are creating these solutions, of course, they use AI, but they must consider ethical aspects in the solution. And which aspects they must consider? First one, privacy and law. Second one, equity and justice. The third one, transparency and human consent. And the fourth one, bias and discrimination. And why they must do that? Because it's not only a solution for Ambev. They are learning how to create technology, solutions of technology. And for us, it's very important that we are not only teaching students how to be good engineers, but we are helping students how to transform the world through technology. Indeed, it's very important. Today, they are creating prototypes. In the future, they are creating real solutions for the people. And what can we do in the future? Here is an example of some AI solution is happening here in Brazil. This is a project called AIED Unplugged, done by Professor Seiji Izotani. And what is the problem? His question is how to improve the writing skills of students in context of low infrastructure and digital skills. So consider that school, the Tupinambá school. How can we use technology to help that teacher to teach better? The solution for him was an AI application for mobile devices that allows the digitalization, correction, and pedagogical diagnosis of handwritten texts in Portuguese. How does it work? The student must write a text, and then the teacher takes a picture of this text, and when he has access to internet, he can upload this photo, and the AI systems analyzes this and gives 2 things. First one, a dashboard for the teacher, and the second one, a feedback for student. And why this is very interesting? First of all, because it considers the reality. It considers how teacher learn and how teacher can teach this and how students learn. And the second one is the solution is also built for the people. This is very, very, very interesting. And it is very different from what is happening in another context here in Brazil. Here at São Paulo, we have the government of São Paulo State, and they want to improve the productivity of our teachers. And they are telling them, our curriculum teachers that create materials for our students, to use ChatGPT to produce those materials. But why they are doing this? They're doing this not because they want to improve the quality of the material, but because they want to save money. And it's so much more different than what Professor Seiji did here and what we're doing at Intelli, for example. At Intelli, we use ChatGPT tools, APIs to correct students' exercises. But who is doing this? The professors in real contexts. So what is the conclusion of these processes of those examples? Is that we can use AI in education to teach, to prepare classes, to learn. We can use this to evaluate learning. We can use this to scale learning processes, or even to create backstage solutions. But in all of those cases, we must integrate real learning processes to technology. And doing this, what are the aspects we must consider when we are producing those solutions? First of all, we need AI developers with global citizenship skills. They cannot just program things. They must understand what is the real problem of the people. Second thing, the responsibility of this depends on the organizations and governments. It doesn't depend only of the people, but who takes the decisions. The third one, it will not solve the educational problem in Brazil. It's not a problem only of technology access, because teachers and students must be part of the process. And what are the essential issues that I said in the beginning? To answer this question, I'd like to show with you, to share with you a consideration that comes from Hannah Arendt. For her, education is where we assume responsibility for the present. And why responsibility here is very important, because the future doesn't belong to us, the adults. The future belongs to students, belongs to the new generations. They are creating the future. We only have to build the path and create conditions for them creating the real solutions that we need, okay? So, what do we teach to our students? We say then that they don't have to be the engineer. Oh my God, they don't have to be the robot. They must be the engineer. And being the engineer is having the capacity, the ability to understand people needs and creating solutions for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip, for that wonderful presentation. What I would like to highlight with your message is that you've used the philosophy of Freire. Actually, he's also one of my most favorite scholars, but his problem posing model of education of toppling the one-way top-down form of learning, and kind of this idea that no matter how much experience, no matter what background you come from, we all do know something, and we are also ignorant of a lot of things as well. And how this philosophy translates into Intelli by saying that, okay, you don't tell to the students that these are the solution, these are the future, but you ask the student what are solutions for them, what do you want to see, and what change, and how do they want to work together for that kind of solution. I guess that's important. So we can take a few questions. Now we can have here, Voot David says, in reference to the assessment and evaluation part of Intelli, how do we ensure that AI will create more learning efficiency and not backfire to the traditional way of education?
Very good question. Because who uses these tools is the teacher, is the professor. He has the responsibility for this. So teachers, they will not be replaced by robots. It won't happen in education. And as they are doing this, it is one more tool that can use it to improve the learning processes. So that's why AI can be very useful for all students, but who must consider if there are bias, who must consider if the AI really understand what we are needing. It's our responsibility to understand what we are wanting to use from AI.
Thank you so much. Okay, so for our next question, okay, I think we do have one from Roberta Ramos. What are the main results you see from this change on educational model? What do you see different in the students after having such practical learning?
Very interesting. Well, first of all, the meaning, that is the meaningful, for them learning is a meaningful process, so they can understand why they are studying those subjects. For example, when you are teaching them how to uh, for example, nonviolence communication, and as they work together, they must understand, it is important for me because when I have to say something to somebody, I must check if they understood what I'm saying. And the second aspect, I think it's different in the students after having such in practical learning, is that they are more able to work, because the methodology is not a methodology that works only in educational process. We use a methodology that represents what is happening in real life. For example, our students of technology, they use the method, the Scrum method, to create those artifacts. And that is the same method that they will use in organizations. So I think it's very nice. It's really, really interesting when they are doing their internships, for example.
That's really nice. So I guess we can take one last question. This is from Stefano. What should teachers learn about artificial intelligence to be efficient teachers and integrate this technology into their pedagogy?
Nice, nice. I think we should learn a little bit of programming, maybe learning some Python, Python language of programming. Maybe it could be interesting because with this, we can have more critical thinking about what AI is telling us. It's a possibility. And the second one, I would say that those data we are producing belongs to whom? I think that is important for us because when we use some data, for example, my student wrote a text when he's telling about violence, cases of violence. What we do with that? Who will use this text? I think we must have this responsibility too.
That's amazing. I guess we still have one last question, and this is actually a good question to kind of wrap up the entire conference as well, because we're talking about the use of AI in the global south and in different contexts as well from the past. So Shivam asked, would love to understand how approaches coming from Brazil and the larger global south is also decolonizing global practices around new AI technology development and education. So what's
Wow,
your thoughts?
very nice, very interesting. So we are in Brazil. We are here in Brazil. When we are teaching our students, they must consider aspects such as race, for example. Inequalities is also important. And they must consider another aspect, which is gender relations, for example. And why is that important? Because bios is happening. Because we have our bios and because our tools also have those bios. So when we have a language produced by someone that considers those aspects, that understands this and lives this, the solution is totally different. So our approach is integrating areas. We must integrate areas. We must integrate what are our knowledges that comes from where we live. It's very important. So that's why we have an Institute of Technology here in Brazil. because technology doesn't come from only the central places. It comes from here. It comes from our day-by-day life. So that's we want to empower our students to learn and to create things that are meaningful things.
That was really enlightening, and I hope you do more great work in Italy. So thank you so much, Felipe, and we hope to meet you again really soon.
Thank you for all. Have a good day.
It was nice having you. Okay, so as we come to the conclusion of this event, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of our speakers and every one of you there in the YouTube comments for your enthusiastic participation and insightful contributions throughout our discussions today. Your presence and your participation has truly enriched our gathering. But before we leave, I would like to personally invite you to our workshop tomorrow at University College Dublin Belfield campus at the Global Lounge at 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. The design of the conference is called a Designathon, a mix of a design workshop and a hackathon. Participants will be mentored to speculate on solutions for problems that we discussed today during the plenary talks, and this will culminate to a pitching session. We have an exciting prize for tomorrow, so please register on the link that we will send on our YouTube chat. Don't forget to register if you're here in Dublin and you are available. And that's it. Today's event has been a remarkable journey exploring diverse topics ranging from the growth strategies and digitalization for sustainability to the evolving intersections of data infrastructures and ecology. We've also delved into critical issues in education, environmental stewardship, daily life, and the imperative of sustainable development in our world. And I am grateful to all of our esteemed speakers coming from all over the world for sharing their expertise and their thought provoking insights. Each presentation has offered valuable perspective and inspired new ideas for action and change. So I hope we will carry forward this spirit of interdisciplinarity, this collaboration and innovation that has defined our time together. So we can continue to drive positive impact and shape a more sustainable and inclusive future. If you have time, you can share our YouTube video and share to everyone the event that we will be holding tomorrow. Once again, thank you for being part of our event. Safe travels and best wishes to all of you. Until we meet again.